What do you reckon is the best version of Cyclops we've had?
Scott Marsden, just because he's never stopped being fucks over. Like, Superman stole his girl. Because he was in Superman, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He was in Superman. And then, like, because he was in Superman, the X-Men people got really pissed off. It's like, how dare you jump ship? So they killed Cyclops.
Is that why they killed him?
Because he wanted to go be in Superman. And then he goes into Superman, and Superman sleeps with his girlfriend. He can't win, and now he's got to team up with Sonic. So at first glance, and no, I'm not going to apologise for that pun, the superhero Cyclops' powers seem to work in a fairly straightforward manner. However, according to the comics, the way Cyclops' powers function is a little more, shall I say, unusual.
So how do Cyclops' powers work? I was under the impression it was just a laser.
Yeah, a lot of people think that he just fires lasers out of his eyes, and for the first 2 decades the character existed, that was the explanation. It was that Cyclops' powers work, that he absorbs ambient radiation from the environment, largely solar radiation, which he then metabolizes inside his body and just expels as a beam of pure fucking energy from his eyeballs. That's apparently not how it works. Even though his eye beams function like lasers and people call them lasers, they're not lasers.
So it was initially a solar beam.
Yeah, basically, yeah. He was essentially just like Ivy sawing it the fuck up and just solar beaming people with his eyeballs. And apparently that explanation was too stupid, even though it sounds hilarious. Because someone being a giant solar battery is actually a pretty cool idea for a hero, because that's how Superman works.
I was just thinking
like,
that.
Superman's, maybe that's why they changed it, I don't know, but for the first 2 decades, Cyclops existed. Said, his powers, he metabolizes ambient radiation, which he then, releases from his eyeballs.
So if his eyes aren't firing lasers, what are they firing?
They are firing energy from a non-Einsteinian universe.
Because that's way less stupid.
Yeah, I think in one of the comics, like, they retconned it 20 years later. Said, no, he doesn't absorb ambient radiation. His eyes are a portal to a universe filled with apparently a limitless amount of this weird energy that fires out of his eyes. I'm not making this up, this is how Cyclops' powers work. His eyes are portals to another dimension. and that dimension is just filled to the brim with that red sex energy he fires out his eyes.
Is it specifically just his eyeballs, though? Like, if you took out the middle of his nose, would he fire it in a straight
We don't
line?
know. It's apparently just his eyeballs act as a portal to this dimension. And I think it's variously established it's trauma that stops him from able to turn off the power. So that's why he has to wear the ruby quartz visor over his eyes, because the only things in the known universe able to stop this energy are Cyclops' own body, which is why his eyelids can stop it, his brother, because his brother's powers don't work on him, and vice versa, and ruby quartz. And I always wonder why. That makes sense, but sometimes in those movies, he's wearing glasses that don't fully cover his eyes.
Yeah,
you can see out the bottom there. How does that work?
You'd think he'd just have discs coming out of both sides.
Yeah, the visor makes sense. It completely envelops his field of view. But in some films, he just wears regular douchebag sunglasses. But I think in X-Men First Class, he's wearing the douchey sunglasses where you can see he's clearly got parts of his eyes that are visible here. Surely every part of his peripheral vision not covered by those glasses should just be exploding with energy at all times.
He should be wearing Toad goggles if he wants to wear sunglasses.
Oh man, it's
so go right up to your skin.
It's so stupid. These powers just do not make sense.
Cyclops' brother is Havoc.
Yes.
Right? So does Havoc's power come from the same dimension?
No, it's a different dimension.
But it's the both dimensions.
Yes. Havoc's powers have nothing to do with Cyclops' powers, but their powers don't work on each other due to a quirk of mutant biology that usually gives siblings complementary powers. So Cyclops can't hurt his brother with his powers, and Havoc can't hurt Cyclops. It's really fucking stupid. Do you want me to make this whole thing a little bit more stupid?
It can get more stupid.
Yes. Cyclops' eye beams, his optic blasts, they produce no heat whatsoever. Do you know, even though in X-Men First Class you see him burn down a tree with them. In actual fact, his eye beams are pure concussive force, much akin to a water jet or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's how they cut through things. They don't cut through a laser. They cut through a just high pressure water jet. Put it another way, he's punching people with his eyes. I'm not making this up, because a colloquial name for the universe where Cyclops' optic blast come from is just the punch dimension, because the only thing we know about it is that Cyclops' eyes are a portal to it, and it's just full of this red energy that punches you constantly. And apparently there's an infinite amount, and only Cyclops is able to access it, which means he effectively has an infinite amount of energy he can produce. Which makes you wonder, why has there never been a comic where someone just straps Cyclops down to a table and uses his eyes to just work a turbine or some shit.
If he ever died, you have to assume that his eyes are open, the dimension will still be active. So if he dies, they can just take his head and use him as like a perpetual motion machine.
Basically, yeah. That makes sense. That makes more sense than anything else in that comic.
It's the future of energy in that
the weirdest
universe.
thing is, like, early in the comics, like when they said he would metabolize solar energy, they said, like, if he gets too much, he has to, like, periodically, like, vent the energy. And sometimes, obviously, if he vents it for too much, then he gets tired and he has to recharge. Now they say, no, just holding his eyes open really hurts. And I like to think that Cyclops is just really, really fucking good at staring contests. Because he can just leave his eyes open forever. And because, obviously, the upper limits of how powerful these lasers can be, or these optic blasts, isn't really known. They said, like, yeah, he can, like, using his visor, he can make it precise enough to, like, just, like, knock a can over on a table. Or if he just lets loose, he can level a mountain. It's like, that's an awful lot of power to come from a guy's eyeballs.
Does the power dissipate over distance?
No.
So if he fired it into space, it would never stop?
It's crazy, yeah. Upper limits of this power is not known because it comes from a universe where things don't make sense. Like,
That's so dumb.
It's the punch dimension, Brad. The punch dimension. And it's so fucking stupid because obviously he can stop the Hulk. He can, like, completely just, like, he can wipe out an entire city by just going, like, looking from left to right. If he just, like, alters his peripheral vision with his eyes open without his visor on, he can level a city. It's so dumb.
So in X-Men Origins, when they have Cyclops appear, and he's already got sunglasses on, where the fuck did he get them?
I don't know. I want to know what doctor realised that those glasses will stop my eye blasts. It's so fucking dumb.
In order to test it, you'd have to be like, okay, open your eyes for a second. We're going to hold this ruby quartz in front of your eyes.
I don't know.
How many materials are blown up in that process?
Those movies don't make sense. So I guess it's supposed to show that his powers are just coming in and he wears the sunglasses as, like, to stop him getting a headache from the glare or whatever. But how many, like, moments in that franchise does Cyclops have his visor stolen and he just, like, levels a building? Because I love that in the first X-Men movie where you get Professor X going, mutant registration, it's like, it's bad, we shouldn't do it. And then later in the movie, his most well-trained mutant levels a fucking train station by accident. It's like, people have to, like, register a gun. You've got what amounts to a rail gun in each eyeball. Maybe we should know where this guy is and keep tabs on him. That sounds kind of fucking dangerous. Because have you ever seen, you probably haven't, but Resident Evil, I think it's Vendetta. Because there is a moment at the end of that film where they fire a rail gun and it just levels, like, an entire city block. And I'm just imagining that as Cyclops' eyeballs. Because in that movie, like, the director's commentary says, like, yeah, it's a cool visual, but in the next movie, we need to have this person getting chastised for firing this. That's really fucking stupid. Like, how many times has Cyclops accidentally leveled a building with his eyeballs and then gone, my bad?
See, I'm imagining that scene in Shin Godzilla. The one where he activates the beam and it just slices the
It
entire
cuts through
city
fucking
out.
everything.
Just but that's just Cyclops, like, accidentally knocking his glasses off.
Yeah.
Someone bumps into him. That scene in Spider-Man 2 when they knock his books out of his hand.
Yeah.
Just that with Cyclops.
Just imagine that, but his eyeballs just fall. The worst bit as well, what about it happen if you got an eye transplant?
Well, so you'd have one of them.
Yeah, could you take out his eyeballs and just use them into a gun?
Well, it depends if he's got eyeballs. I mean, he must do because he grew up with them. But
Yeah.
then, did they disappear into the punch dimension?
No,
And now
his
he's got
eyeballs
portals.
they're a portal.
So he
Which
does
means, though, if you poked him
physically-
in the eye, would your fingers go into the punch dimension? If you, like, got Ant-Man, could Ant-Man wear a suit that, like, nullifies this energy and dive into Cyclops' eyes? We don't know.
Like a vibranium suit, because it's force, and that
Yeah.
will absorb all.
What would happen if, obviously, then Cyclops fires pure concussive force at, like, Black Panther's vibranium suit, which absorbs all the energy? Would then, like, Black Panther just become a walking earthquake? We don't know. But, Brad, as per usual, it can get a little bit dumber, because do you remember when I said that Havoc, like Scott Summers' brother, is completely immune to his powers?
Yeah.
Scott Summers, Cyclops, is immune to his own powers as well, because otherwise his head would explode off his body every time he opened his eyeballs. Because think he's, like, outputting enough force to level buildings with his eyeballs, and he doesn't move. So it's said that his own body is completely and utterly immune to this force for some reason. And fans have theorised that Cyclops, if he really wanted to, could maybe fly by holding his own hands in front of his face, because his own body's immune to, like, the concussive force, which should obviously work like a water jet and push him back. And I want to see that in a movie.
So if he held his hands at like a 45-degree angle in front of his head so that the spray...
And angled the beams down, because his own body is completely immune to it, but the world around him isn't. So Cyclops could potentially fly by just pointing his head at the floor or angling with his hands to reflect the energy back on himself.
Like Godzilla
Like
again.
Godzilla again. So what we could really... which makes me think... Those movies, the X-Men movies, are really boring in the way they show his powers. 'Cause one of my favourite things with superhero movies is showing a superhero's power being used in an interesting way. Like, I love when you get the hero who has like a really obscure power that everyone thinks sucks, but because of their creativity, they become almost unbeatable. Like there's that guy in Misfits, isn't there, who has control over milk.
Yeah.
Which sounds like the stupidest power ever until you ask, well, everyone drinks milk. So obviously you have power over everybody.
Yeah, but the guy who beats him, I'm lactose intolerant, bitch.
Well, I think in like Avatar, The Last Airbender, you have like waterbenders, but someone realised, hang on, well, water is like 70% of the human body, so they learn how to control people's blood and thereby control other people using that power. Or you have like Toph in that series, who could like an earthbender and control earth. When she realised, well, metal is just earth, so I can control metal, and makes herself a walking suit of armour by diving into metal doors and just like an Iron Man suit up animation just around her to punch people with it.
People are made of carbon as well. Could they not theoretically control?
We don't know today, but I love shit like that. And then you have Cyclops, like, what do? Oh, I'd shoot the lasers. I'd do the pew-pew.
Rather than flying around with his hands.
So you could realistically, if you wanted to just point your face at the ground and just carpet... He could become a living, walking Hammer of Dawn from Gears of War. He could fly into the air using his eyeball powers and just pinpoint accurate, just laser blast people into oblivion. So they even do it in the X-Men films, though, with Banshee. Because he can scream real loud, so that means he flies by screaming. Why isn't Cyclops flying by eye laser in everybody?
All the X-Men should just find ways to fly with their powers.
Because it's the most useful ability. Because you have an entire extra axis of movement. Why doesn't Magneto flies a bit? But he should be flying everywhere. He should be flying. Do you know when he stands on just the hovering orb of like metal? That's how he should be travelling all the time, because that is intimidating as fuck. So why doesn't Professor X use his psychic powers to convince himself how to walk? It's stupid. Or get Jean Grey to hover his wheelchair around. It's so stupid. There's nothing more annoying to me than people who don't like when there's boring use of superpowers, like Cyclops. So we've established now that Cyclops sucks because he doesn't use his powers in an interesting way. So let's talk about examples of acts. I love superpowers or like special abilities being used in unique and interesting ways. So what's your favourite example of that from like fiction recently?
I always like the one that you told me of Spider-Man being able to stick anything to anywhere.
Yeah, because
it keeps his mask on.
So to explain, people think the little hairs on his hands. He has that all over his body, but he consciously only uses them in his hands to climb. But he can put it on any part of his body, including his face, and he uses it to keep his mask on, which I think is really cool. The fact that's why his mask never falls off, because he's got basically just these tiny spider heads that can stick to fucking anything, just keeping it on at all times.
It makes the Spider-Man kiss in that first movie a little bit creepy to think that he had to relax all the sticky hairs on his face.
Like the comics talk about it and say he does it. It's all done subconsciously to not hurt people, and it's all guided by his spider sense. It doesn't have to make sense. It's just a cool visual. But I think one of mine is Wolverine. We all know Wolverine. What are his powers? He's got a healing factor and an indestructible skeleton. And I think it's the game X-Men Origins Wolverine, where in one of the missions, a sentinel is flying towards the Earth, we need to stop it. So Wolverine goes, I know what to do, and he jumps out of a plane. And he goes, and he holds his hands out in front of him and turns himself into a human bullet, because I've got an indestructible skeleton, so I'm not going to... It's going to hurt, but it's not like I can break all my bones because they're covered in this indestructible metal. So he jumps out of a plane and turns himself into a human bullet by just diving headfirst, with his claws out, into the Sentinel through its face. Crash lands, obviously he's injured, but then his healing factor fixes him, and he walks it off like a boss. Which means, realistically, Wolverine can just be a human missile. He can become Cannonball. He can be like Titanfall when you call the Titan, and he just lands and just crushes whatever's below him.
We have seen that in a film. That's what the Terminator does in Genesis.
Yeah, Wolverine could realistically do that at all times. If he wanted to, he could just enter every fight by just jumping out of a plane in orbit and turning himself into just a fucking Mac blast out of Halo Wars.
While we're talking about things falling out of the sky, there was a bit in, is it Winter Soldier, where Captain America breaks his fall with his shield.
Yeah, because it dissipates all kinetic energy. I really like that as well. Or when he jumps out of the car and uses it to slide.
If it dissipates all energy, how does it rebound back to it?
We don't know. It's a special magic shield, Brad. It doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to make sense. But yeah, I like that. And isn't there another one where he jumps out of a plane and then he lands in the water because he knows his super serum lets him swim real fast?
Yeah, it's start of Winter Soldier.
Yeah, again, he just jumps out of a plane. Does he have a parachute? No. Speaking of Captain America's shield, the moment in Avengers where obviously he blocks Mjolnir and it just sends out, the huge sound wave that knocks everyone back. And then throughout the Avengers movies, they learn, oh wait, that's a really good way to just get people the fuck away from us. And they do it in Age of Ultron, don't they? Like, just Captain America's there and he just goes, oh god damn it. And he holds up his shield and he gets Mjolnir thrown at him and everyone dies.
We got that in Luke Cage. Iron Fist and Luke Cage put their powers together to create a shockwave.
Oh yeah, because Luke Cage has got indestructible skin and Iron Fist is got a glowing.
I think they learned that when they were fighting. So Iron Fist punched Luke Cage's hands.
Yeah, to make
cause a ripple.
To make the shockwave, which is fucking awesome. And oh god, there's so another one is Avengers again is Iron Man's suit when he gets overcharged to 300%, which does get a call back in Endgame. No, we can't spoil that, can we? Can we? Should we? Well, it's been out for a while now. This will be going out into in the fight scene. They do that again.
This is going out in about 3 months.
Yeah, and I was so hyped because I always got really pissed off that they never used that again.
Yeah.
The fact that Iron Man, for some reason, his suit can just overcharge thanks to Thor. It's like, well, you've got an unlimited supply of energy right here, right? Again, why isn't Thor just stood on top of buildings calling in lightning strikes to just power buildings and shit?